What if Deku was in the UA support course? Part 2. Now, before I do get into this, go down into the link in the description and check out Lord Duck's channel. Let's try to get him up to 400 subscribers by the end of today, let's just try and do that. Now, where I left off, I saw what just told Izuku that it was a good idea to have all of the students train using his perfect cube type invention. So they spent most of the day learning that. But when it came time for hero class, they ended up stopping training with the cube as they started to hear running from down the hall. Now they're confused by this, only to have the door burst open as All Might yells, "I'm running through the door like a normal person!" And today we will be doing a Heroes vs. Villains assignment. So basically, the heroes are tasked with going into a building and finding this bomb. All you have to do is defuse it in a 15-minute time minute by touching it, and the heroes will win. If they do not do that, the villains will win. And you can't be heroes nor villains without a costume. So, here are the costumes you all turned into us. As the wall opens up, revealing costumes, as all of the students look on in wonder, as then All Might says that the costumes each have a number on the suitcase they're in, and the number of desk the student has will walk up and take the number of suitcase that matches their desk number, as Izuku would go up and get his hero costume, which basically he doesn't idolize All Might as much. So let's get rid of the bunny ears and keep the metal. This time he has a metal bracing. He also has boots that will help him regulate the flow of One for All, and gloves basically at the end of season 4 that he has, having invented them himself. Now, once all of the students get dressed, they'd walk down to training ground B, where they end up meeting All Might, as All Might would then once again restate the rules, as he would then put all the students in a lottery to see who would be picked. Now, Izuku would end up being paired with Shako Uraraka, and Bakugo and Ida would be paired up together, and they would be faced against each other. Izuku would be as a villain along with Uraraka, and Bakugo and Ida would be forced to try and be the heroes to try and find the bomb. Now, Izuku would take the bomb and place it in the highest most room, as he starts rigging them with traps. He'd place tiny motion-sensed cubes, as Izuku, having perfected the perfect cube, has basically tinkered with it even more and tweaked it so that he can make other types of cubes, like a motion-sensing cube. So if someone steps past it or it senses motion, it will instantly wrap around what it sensed and capture them. Although it may have flaws, like if the wind blows and it might sense that as somehow motion, and it might just go around nothing, but Izuku thinks that his motion sensing cubes will work in this closed scenario. He rigs basically the entire building up with these motion sensing traps as he waits. Now, after that, we cut to Bakugo and Ida, who have just heard from All Might that they can walk into the room. Now, Izuku, of course, or Bakugo would have known that Izuku would have tried to rig the entire building full of traps, so he would try to think and look for them as much as possible. But Izuku, having so many of them in his hero costume, Bakugo and Ida would both eventually fall victim to the traps, as both Uraraka and Izuku tie up Bakugo and Ida, giving them the win, as All Might congratulates them as he asks the students who is the MVP of the match. Now, Momo would end up saying that it was Izuku, having brought to the table all of those traps, and All Might would basically tell her she was right. Izuku brought all of those traps, which basically allowed the heroes not to even get close to the bomb. Now, the rest of the classmates would go, all having some success, some not. It's 50-50 chance, basically, as the school day ends with all of the students going home. Now, one person in the distance would have seen Izuku and Uraraka working together and would be jealous. I think you guys know who it is. It's Izuku's support course classmate, Mei Hatsume. Now, Izuku would go to the support course every now and then after finishing his schoolwork in 1A, as he would then basically just be tasked with making small tweaks to heroes in training's costumes to try to make them better and more suited for their course. Now, Izuku would end up basically hearing about a student named Mirio Tagata. I think he was like the number one student in the big three, basically, as Izuku would hear how his clothes kept falling off when he'd go through, like, walls. So Izuku devised a plan. His hair could probably not phase through it because it's technically a part of his body, so he told Mirio the plan and they made his hero suit and his UA uniform out of it and they tested it out. And it worked. It's kind of like a little filler type thing, I guess. And now a quick ad break. Over, we cut back to Izuku walking to UA, where he ends up hearing that they're going to be going on a field trip. Izuku thinks nothing of it, as Aizawa would then tell them to put their hero suits on if they want to, and just don't be late to get on the bus, as they will be leaving anybody behind if they don't make it. Izuku would get there no problem, as the rest of the students would as well. Now, Izuku and everybody else piling onto the bus as they start driving to a place known as the USJ. Now, Izuku would, of course, get off the bus once they arrive along with the rest of his classmates as they meet the hero 13. Now, 13 would end up explaining to them all of the things they're going to be doing as Izuku basically just points out that there's a massive purple portal there and he doesn't think that's supposed to be there, right? As Aizawa would immediately jump down and yell to the students that those are real villains and for 13 to protect the students. As 13 would basically start to tell the class that those are real villains and that they need to have their guard up as much as possible as to not basically try to get trapped by these villains. Now, Izuku and the rest of his class would end up getting separated by Kirogiri, the warp villain Cork. Izuku would end up being dropped into the water zone as he basically tries to not fall into the water as his machines might break or malfunction. As he ends up jumping over, diving onto the boat, using One for All, using air pressure to try and push him as he falls onto the boat as he sees Tsuyu Asui pull Mineta up onto the boat as well. As Izuku would then see them as he thinks for a moment and says there's many villains here. I'm not sure if my machines will work in the water, but at least I should test one out. As Izuku flicks one as it falls into the water, and one of the villains touch it as it wraps around him, basically capturing him in this perfect cube. As Izuku says, they work. Hey Mineta, here, take all of these little cube things. I have an idea. As Mineta says, what do you mean? I want you to throw all of these into the water. I'm going to jump up into the air and flick down on it to try and make some type of whirlpool. So then all the villains end up touching these on accident. So then they end up getting trapped by them. As Mineta thinks for a moment and says, that's actually not that bad of an idea. As Mineta would then basically just start chucking them into the water. Now, the villains, seeing what happened to their friend, would try to avoid them as much as possible. However, Izuku would then jump up into the air and punch down, causing a massive, basically, wind pressure to basically make like a little whirlpool inside the water, as many of the villains would end up getting caught in the perfect cubes. Now, Izuku would end up walking, or swimming rather, out to the main hall, where him and Sue and Mineta would end up seeing Aizawa get the crap beat out of him by the Nomu, as Shigaraki turns towards Izuku and says, Nomu, kill those brats. As Izuku would jump in the way right before the Nomu could punch them, as Izuku would use 20% one for all and punch right at the Nomu, only to see it did nothing. The Nomu would then wind right back its fist and punch Izuku square in the chest, as Izuku is sent flying back into a wall, as he falls down with rubble falling around behind him. As Izuku gets up and barely manages to throw a perfect cube right at the Nomu, as the Nomu touches it, as the perfect cube wraps around the Nomu, as Izuku thinks, I beat it, I caught it. Only as Izuku sees the perfect cube start to shake, he thinks, what? No way. What's happening? As Izuku then sees the perfect cube shatter into tiny little pieces, as he sees the Nomu escape from it, as Izuku thinks, no, I've lost. How could my perfect cube break? As Izuku would then fall unconscious from there. When Izuku wakes up, he starts seeing glimpses as he sees the door slam open, revealing All Might. As All Might, not smiling, would rush down and start to fight the Nomu. Now All Might, being healed, basically with Izuku's metal endoskeleton inside of him, All Might would basically easily be able to defeat this Nomu, going all out on it instantly, not having to worry about going into Small Might form, as the Nomu would be defeated and All Might would save the day. From there, Izuku would think he has a lot of work to be done, as he goes home to try and basically improve his perfect cube, or cry that it just couldn't work. Like, could it have been a malfunction? There was no way the Nomu could have escaped. Only somebody with almost All Might's power could have broken it. And that's where I'm going to leave it off, guys. Make sure you guys go subscribe to Lord Duck. Let's try to get them to 400 subscribers. And yeah, thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.